one plans to stop at a gas station like that. You don't circle it on a map or remember it later as a landmark. It just appears, quietly, after miles of nothing, its lights humming weakly against the dark like they're tired of being on. That's how it was on Route 66 that night, somewhere between Kingman and Nowhere, Arizona. No towns for 40 miles. No cell service. Just a thin highway cutting through the desert like a scar that never healed. Ethan wasn't low on gas when he saw it. That was the strange part. The gauge sat comfortably above half, steady as if it wanted to reassure him. But the moment the station came into view, the needle dipped. Not slowly, suddenly, like it had been yanked downward by an invisible hand. Ethan frowned, tapping the dashboard. "Don't start this," he muttered. The radio crackled, then died. The digital clock blinked once and reset to 12 o'clock. He slowed instinctively. The station looked old even for Route 66. One-story concrete building. 2 pumps. A flickering open sign in the window that buzzed like a trapped insect. No cars. No voices. No movement. Just wind dragging sand across the pavement in thin, whispering lines. Ethan told himself he'd stop, top off, and leave. 5 minutes. In and out. He pulled in. The moment his tires crossed onto the cracked concrete, the engine stalled. Dead silence. Ethan sat there, hands gripping the wheel harder than necessary. The desert at night felt different when your car wasn't running. Larger. Closer. Like the darkness leaned in once it realized you couldn't escape. He tried the ignition. Nothing. "Great," he said, forcing a laugh that sounded wrong in the quiet. He stepped out of the car. The air smelled like dust and something faintly chemical, old fuel maybe. The lights above the pumps flickered, briefly plunging everything into darkness before sputtering back on. That's when he noticed the footprints. They circled the pumps. Not fresh, half buried in sand, but there were dozens of them. Some overlapping. Some stopping abruptly as if the person had vanished mid-step. Ethan crouched, frowning. No tire tracks. Just footprints. "Hello?" he called. His voice didn't echo. It felt swallowed. The door to the station creaked open before he touched it. Ethan froze. The door swung inward slowly, like it had been waiting for him to notice. Inside, the lights were on, too bright, too white. Fluorescent bulbs buzzing overhead. A man stood behind the counter. At least Ethan thought it was a man. He wore a faded uniform, blue with a name patch that read Harold. His posture was stiff, unnatural, like he'd been positioned rather than relaxed into place. His eyes were open but unfocused, staring slightly past Ethan's shoulder. Ethan said. "My car won't start." The man didn't respond. Ethan stepped inside. The air felt colder, heavier. The smell changed, no dust here. Just old paper, oil, and something metallic. "Sir?" Ethan tried again. The man blinked. Slowly, mechanically, his eyes rolled forward and locked onto Ethan's face. "Pump first," he said. His voice sounded like it had been unused for a long time. "I don't really need gas," Ethan said. "But my car." "Pump first." Something about the way he said it made Ethan's skin prickle. Not angry. Not threatening. Just final. Like a rule. Ethan nodded. "Okay." He backed out of the store, never turning his back fully on the man. Outside, the desert felt louder now. The wind had picked up, rattling the loose metal on the building. He grabbed the nozzle from pump 2. The digital display lit up instantly. "Welcome back." Ethan frowned. "Back." He squeezed the handle. Gas flowed immediately, too immediately, like the pump had been primed just for him. The numbers climbed fast. Faster than they should. $10. 20. 30. The tank should have been full already. He released the handle. The pump kept running. Fuel poured out, splashing onto the concrete, but there was no smell. No liquid pooling at his feet. It just vanished. The numbers kept climbing. "Stop," Ethan said, then louder. "Stop." The pump clicked off on its own. The display flashed once, then showed a total. $66.66. Ethan stared. A laugh bubbled up in his throat, sharp and nervous. Real funny. He returned the nozzle and hurried back inside, needing to be done. The man behind the counter hadn't moved. "That'll be $66.66, Harold said. Ethan slid his card across the counter. "Run it." Harold didn't take it. "Cash," he said. "I don't have cash." Harold's head tilted slightly. Not curiosity. Adjustment. Everyone has something, he said. The lights flickered again. Ethan's chest tightened. Look, I just need my car to start. Harold finally reached forward, not for the card, but for a receipt that had already printed. He slid it across the counter. Read it, he said. Ethan hesitated, then picked it up. The paper was warm. It listed the date as April 17, 1994. That's not. Below it, under item, was a single word. Top. The total, paid. How did I pay? Ethan asked. Harold smiled. It wasn't wide. It wasn't exaggerated. It was the tired smile of someone who had given the same answer too many times. You stopped, he said. The lights went out. Not flickered. Total darkness swallowed the station. Ethan dropped the receipt. Hey. Something moved behind him. Not footsteps. Not breathing. Presence. The lights snapped back on. Ethan was alone. The counter was empty. The door to the back room stood open, revealing only darkness beyond. The receipt lay on the floor, but when Ethan picked it up, the ink had changed. Thank you for staying. His heart hammered as he stumbled outside. His car engine started the moment he touched the door. He didn't question it. He got in, slammed the door, and peeled out of the station, tires screaming against concrete. In the rearview mirror, the lights of the station flickered, then went dark entirely, vanishing into the desert as if it had never been there. He didn't slow down until sunrise. By then, he had convinced himself it was exhaustion, a hallucination, a trick of the desert and an old car. Until he stopped for breakfast in Flagstaff. The waitress brought his receipt and paused. You okay? She asked. Ethan frowned. Why? She pointed at the paper. In the margin, faint but unmistakable, was a greasy thumbprint, and beneath it, printed in pale gray ink. You can't stop twice. Ethan looked up. Stop where? He asked. The waitress blinked. Sir? Outside, his car sat quietly. The fuel gauge rested just below half. And for the rest of the drive, every time he passed an empty stretch of road, he felt the urge to slow down, as if something out there was waiting to finish the transaction. And if that gas station still exists, invisible until you need it, what exactly does it take when it finally decides you've paid enough? The first thing Claire noticed was the mile marker. It stood crooked on the side of the road, half buried in sand, its white paint cracked and yellowed like old teeth. She would have driven past it without a second glance, except the number on it made no sense. Mile 241. Claire slowed instinctively. That couldn't be right. She had been counting the markers since leaving Barstow. It was a habit she'd picked up years ago, back when driving helped quiet her thoughts. Mile 198. Then 199. Then 200. She remembered clearly passing 217 less than 10 minutes earlier. There was no way she'd jumped 24 miles. Her foot eased off the gas. The desert stretched endlessly in both directions, flat and unforgiving, the road cutting through it like a ruler line drawn by someone who didn't care what they destroyed to make it straight. The sun was low, bleeding orange into the horizon, shadows stretching long and thin. Claire checked the dashboard clock. 6:42 p.m. She checked her phone. 6:42 p.m. No signal. She swallowed. Okay, she said to herself. Okay, missed one. That's all. She pressed the accelerator. 2 minutes later, another marker appeared. Mile 241. Her stomach tightened. She passed it. Another 2 minutes. Mile 241. The road was the same. The sky unchanged. No turns. No curves. No exits. Claire's grip tightened on the steering wheel. This isn't funny, she said, though there was no one to hear her. She tried to rationalize it. Old road. Old signs. Maybe they'd reused the numbers. Maybe she was tired. She'd been driving since sunrise, fueled by gas station coffee and stubborn determination. Then she saw the gas station. It appeared gradually, as if fading into existence rather than coming into view. A low concrete building. 2 pumps. A sign so sun-bleached it barely read gas. The lot was empty. Her fuel gauge dipped suddenly, the needle dropping from a quarter tank to nearly empty in a single twitch. Claire cursed. She told herself she'd stop, refuel, ask directions, and leave. Nothing more. She didn't like places like this. Too quiet, too still, like the world had forgotten them on purpose. She pulled in. The crunch of tires on gravel sounded unnaturally loud. When she stepped out of the car, the air felt wrong, heavy, pressurized, like the moment before a storm, except the sky was perfectly clear. She glanced back at the road. The mile marker beside the station read 241. A shiver crawled up her spine. The pump handle was warm when she touched it, as if someone had just used it. The screen flickered on. Mile 241, regular or diesel? She frowned. That's not how. The screen changed. You've been here before. Her breath caught. I haven't, she said aloud. The pump whirred to life on its own. Gasoline flowed, the numbers ticking upward. She watched the gauge on her dashboard rise, then keep rising. Past full. Past where it should stop. Claire yanked the handle back. The pump stopped instantly. The screen flashed again. Inside. Every instinct told her to get back in the car and drive. But when she tried, the door wouldn't open. The handle pulled, useless and limp, like it had disconnected from the latch. Her pulse hammered. Fine, she whispered. Fine. Inside, the station was brighter than it should have been. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Shelves were stocked neatly, dust-free, with products that looked decades old. Candy bars with outdated logos. Bottles of soda she hadn't seen since childhood. A woman stood behind the counter. She looked normal at first glance. Middle-aged. Brown hair pulled back. Glasses perched low on her nose. She was writing something in a ledger. You're late, the woman said without looking up. Late for what? Claire asked. The woman finally raised her eyes. They were tired. Not sleepy, exhausted in a way that went deeper, like she hadn't rested properly in years. For deciding, she said. Deciding what? The woman slid the ledger across the counter. Look, she said. Claire hesitated, then leaned forward. The pages were filled with names. Hundreds of them. Thousands maybe. Some written neatly, others scribbled in a hurry. Next to each name was a date and a number. Every entry. Claire scanned the list, her breath quickening. Then she saw her own name. Claire Henson. June 14, 2026. 241. That's today, she whispered. The woman nodded. You always notice eventually. Always. Claire snapped. I've never been here. The woman's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. You stop, she said. You don't remember stopping. That's the mercy part. Claire backed away from the counter. I want to leave. Of course you do. The lights flickered. Outside, something thudded against the wall of the building. Once, twice, like a large body shifting its weight. Claire's voice shook. What is this place? A question, the woman replied. One the road asks. Another thud. Closer this time. What happens if I leave? Claire asked. The woman turned the ledger around, flipping to the last few pages. Names were crossed out in thick black ink. They stopped seeing the markers, she said. The road lets them go. And the others? The woman didn't answer. The thudding stopped. Silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. Claire looked at the ledger again. At the endless list of names. At her own waiting. If I don't sign? She asked. The woman met her gaze. Then you keep driving. That sounds fine. You'll pass mile 241 forever. Claire swallowed. Outside, the engine of her car turned over on its own. She took the pen. Her hand hovered over the page. Does anyone ever come back? She asked. The woman's eyes softened just a little. No one remembers how. Claire signed. The moment the pen left the paper, the lights went out. She gasped and found herself sitting in her car, engine running, the road stretching ahead like nothing had ever been wrong. She drove. She didn't stop again until dawn. Weeks later, safe at home, she convinced herself it had been a stress-induced hallucination. Just another strange night on a long road. Until she took a different highway. A brand new road. A clean sign. Mile 241. Claire slammed the brakes. Her phone buzzed. A notification she didn't recognize. You've already answered once. Are you sure you want to change your mind? And if a road remembers every choice you make, what happens when it asks you the same question again? The motel sign said no vacancy, but Daniel pulled in anyway. He hadn't seen another car in over an hour, and the sun was already collapsing into the horizon, bleeding red across the desert like something wounded and dragging itself away. His phone had lost signal miles back, the GPS frozen on a blank gray screen that refused to update no matter how many times he tapped it. He told himself he'd stop only to ask directions. That was the lie. The truth was simpler. He was tired, his eyes burned, and the road had started to feel unreal, too straight, too endless, as if it had stopped leading anywhere and existed only to keep him moving. The motel sat just off Route 66, a low U-shaped building with peeling paint and curtains yellowed by decades of sun. Half the rooms were dark. A few glowed dimly, lights buzzing behind thin glass. The office was attached to the left wing, its door ajar. Daniel parked and stepped out. The silence was immediate and heavy. No insects, no wind. Even the distant hum of the highway felt muted, like the sound was being absorbed by the sand itself. The NO vacancy sign flickered. For a moment the O went dark. Then the sign read, "Vacancy." Daniel frowned. He rubbed his eyes, certain it was exhaustion playing tricks on him. The sign flickered again. "No vacancy." "Cute," he muttered. He walked toward the office. Inside, the air was stale and smelled faintly of bleach and old carpet. A bell sat on the counter. A ledger lay open beside it, pages filled with neat handwriting. "Hello," Daniel called. No answer. He rang the bell. The sound echoed longer than it should have. From behind a beaded curtain came footsteps, slow, dragging slightly, like the person was unused to walking. An old man emerged. He was tall but stooped, his skin thin and papery, stretched too tight over sharp bones. His eyes were pale, almost colorless, and when he looked at Daniel, it felt like being examined rather than seen. "You missed the turn," the man said. "I don't think so," Daniel replied. "I just need a room. Or directions." The man glanced toward the door, then back at Daniel. "You can have one," he said, "but only for the night." "That's fine." The man slid a key across the counter. "Room 6. The metal was warm." "No ID?" Daniel asked. The man shook his head. "We don't keep records like that anymore." Daniel hesitated. Something about the phrasing bothered him. "Is the sign broken?" he asked. "It said vacancy." The man's lips pressed together. "It always does." Eventually, Daniel took the key. As he turned to leave, the man spoke again. "Do not open the curtains," he said. Daniel paused. "Why?" "Because they'll notice." "Who?" The man had already turned away. Room 6 was at the far end of the right wing. The door creaked loudly when Daniel unlocked it, the sound echoing down the empty walkway. Inside, the room was small but clean. Too clean. The bedspread was tucked perfectly. The air smelled faintly of soap and something metallic underneath. He locked the door behind him. The moment the lock clicked, the silence changed. It wasn't quiet anymore. It was expectant. Daniel sat on the bed and rubbed his face. "You're exhausted," he told himself. "That's all." He checked his phone. No signal. The time read 11:11 p.m. He plugged it into the charger anyway. The battery icon appeared, but didn't move. A knock sounded at the door. Daniel froze. The knock came again. Soft, polite. He stood slowly and approached the door, heart pounding. "Yes." "Office," a voice said. The old man's voice. "Just checking." "Checking what?" "That you're alone." Daniel swallowed. "I am." Silence. Then footsteps moved away. Daniel locked the door again, this time sliding the chair under the handle for good measure. He tried to sleep. He dreamed of the road. Not driving it, standing on it. Barefoot. The asphalt was warm beneath his feet, pulsing like something alive. Mile markers rose out of the ground around him, their numbers all scratched out, replaced with a single word carved deep into the metal. "Stay." He woke with a gasp. The clock read 11:11 p.m. He stared at it, confused. He was sure time had passed. He checked his phone. Still 11:11 p.m. A sound came from outside. Not footsteps. Breathing. Slow. Too close. Daniel crept to the window without thinking, then stopped inches from the curtains, remembering the warning. "Do not open the curtains." The breathing grew louder. Something brushed against the glass. Daniel backed away. A whisper slid through the thin door, low and wet. "Vacancy." Daniel clamped his hands over his ears. The whisper came again, closer. "Vacancy." The doorknob turned. Once, twice, stopped. Daniel's chest burned as he held his breath. The clock clicked. 11:12 p.m. The breathing stopped. Silence returned, heavier than before. Minutes passed. Or hours. Daniel couldn't tell. Finally, exhaustion dragged him under. He woke to sunlight. Real sunlight. Birds chirped outside. The clock read 7:03 a.m. Relief washed over him so fast it made him dizzy. He laughed shakily, packed his bag, and unlocked the door. The walkway was empty. The motel office door stood wide open. Inside, dust coated everything. The ledger lay on the counter, its pages yellowed and brittle. No fresh ink. No recent names. A newspaper sat folded near the register. The headline caught his eye. Local motel closed after disappearances. The date was over 30 years old. Daniel backed away slowly. Outside, his car was exactly where he'd left it. It started immediately. He didn't look back as he pulled onto Route 66. He drove for hours before stopping. At a modern rest stop, he used the bathroom, splashed water on his face, and tried to steady his breathing. As he reached for paper towels, he noticed something in the mirror behind him. Faint lines, pressed into the skin of his neck. Fingerprint-shaped bruises. Someone else was breathing in the reflection. Daniel spun around. No one was there. But above the sink, scratched into the mirror from the inside, were words that hadn't been there a second ago. Vacancy never ends. You just learn when not to check in. So if some places don't let you leave, how do you know you ever really did? The first time someone tried to flag Mark down on Route 66, he didn't stop. It was just past midnight, the road empty in that unsettling way that made your headlights feel like the only real thing in the world. The man stood on the shoulder, arms raised, waving both hands in wide, desperate motions. No car. No flashlight. Just a dark silhouette against the pale wash of Mark's beams. Mark tightened his grip on the steering wheel and drove past. He told himself what everyone tells themselves. Don't stop for strangers at night. Especially not in the middle of nowhere. Especially not when there's no sign of an accident. In the rearview mirror, the man lowered his arms and watched the car disappear. Mark didn't think about it again until 20 minutes later. That's when he saw the man again. Same posture. Same frantic waving. Same stretch of road, or so it looked. The same broken guardrail behind him. The same bent road sign half swallowed by sand. Mark slowed, heart thudding. That's not possible, he whispered. He checked the speedometer. He hadn't turned around. He hadn't stopped. There were no intersections for miles. The man stepped closer to the road this time, his face briefly illuminated as Mark passed. He was smiling. Mark hit the gas. The road stretched on, unchanging. The radio crackled with static, then a voice slipped through, soft, distorted. Don't stop. Mark slapped the radio off. 10 minutes later, the man was back. This time he stood in the middle of the road. Mark slammed the brakes, tires screaming as the car fishtailed before stopping inches from the figure. His heart hammered so hard it hurt. The man leaned down, resting his palms on the hood. Up close, his features were wrong. His eyes were too dark, swallowing the light instead of reflecting it. His smile didn't reach them. Thank you, the man said calmly. You finally noticed. Mark shook his head, breath coming fast. How did you get here? The man tilted his head. You passed me. That's not an answer. The man straightened. It never is. Mark glanced around. The desert was empty. No footsteps in the sand. No sound but the ticking of his cooling engine. I need help, the man said. Mark laughed, sharp and hysterical. You've got some nerve saying that. You left me, the man replied. Everyone does. At first. Mark opened his mouth to argue, then noticed something that made his stomach drop. The man cast no shadow. Get away from my car, Mark said. The man stepped back obediently. Of course, drive. That's what you're good at. Mark didn't hesitate. He swerved around him and sped off, adrenaline burning through his veins. He didn't slow down for an hour. Eventually, exhaustion crept in. The road signs blurred. His thoughts tangled. When he blinked, he saw the man's smile burned into the darkness behind his eyelids. Then his headlights caught movement ahead. A figure on the shoulder. Mark screamed. He swerved, barely missing the man as he roared past. He glanced in the mirror. The man stood there waving. Only now there were two of him. Mark's chest tightened. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." The radio snapped back on by itself. A clear voice this time. "Come." Almost friendly. "Drivers are advised to remain alert," it said. "Fatigue causes hallucinations." Mark laughed bitterly. That's right. Hallucinations. When he looked back at the road, the man was gone. So was the second one. Relief flooded him, thin and fragile, but enough to keep him going. He didn't realize he'd been holding his breath until it came rushing out. That's when he noticed the hitchhiker's thumbprint on his windshield. On the inside. Mark pulled over hard, skidding onto the shoulder. He scrambled out of the car, shaking, and inspected the glass. The print was real. Slightly greasy. Fresh. "No," he said. "That's not possible." Footsteps crunched behind him. "You stopped," the man said softly. Mark spun around. The man stood a few feet away, head cocked, studying him with open curiosity. "I didn't let you in," Mark said. The man smiled wider. "You didn't have to." Mark backed toward the car. "What do you want?" "To finish the ride," the man said. "I never get to." Mark shook his head. "Get your own car." The man's smile faltered. For the first time, something like sadness flickered across his face. "I can't," he said. "I never made it that far." The desert around them felt closer now, the darkness pressing in like a crowd leaning forward. "What happened to you?" Mark asked despite himself. The man looked down at the road. "They didn't stop," he said. "None of them did." A chill ran through Mark. "So you're, what? Dead?" The man looked up slowly. "Does it matter?" he asked. Mark lunged for the driver's door. Hands slammed against his shoulders, pinning him in place. They were cold. Too strong. "I just need a little time," the man whispered. "That's all anyone ever has." Mark struggled, screaming, but the desert swallowed the sound. When the hands released him, Mark collapsed to his knees. The man was gone. The road was empty. Mark scrambled into the car and drove until the sun rose. He told himself it was shock, sleep deprivation, a breakdown brought on by isolation. He believed it, mostly, until weeks later, driving home from work on a crowded city highway, he saw a familiar shape on the shoulder. A man, waving, smiling. Mark didn't slow down. In his rearview mirror, the man lowered his arms and stepped into traffic. Every car passed straight through him, except Mark's reflection in the mirror, which was no longer alone. The man stood in the back seat, smiling patiently. "Thank you," he said. "I won't be long." So if you never stop for strangers on the road, what happens when one of them finally makes the journey with you?